Well, I've been a busy boy and I'm trying to suss all this out, making lots of changes. You can tell I'm always uncomfortable doing videos. So like the previous video, I mentioned that I've gone down to just two tori, or two toruses. I've simplified. This is brilliant. Finally got there. Of course, I had this system that had a dielectric inductor. I will get to explaining all this if and when the right type of interest comes about, because this is really, really deep stuff. But if I'm to go into how the entire system works, that's pretty deep. But essentially, this is pretty cool. Yes, I've had a few beers, so forgive me. I'm excited. I've been on this non-stop. So, now, as you can see, a simple conical coil. I've succeeded, I will get to that, in getting these in the E field differential, which to me is important, and with a very, very large back EMF, which I capture onto the radials. I've made another mod where I now carry what I'm calling the signal ground all the way down. I had the choke here previously, and so that was choking and everything was forced onto the radials. I'll go back to the coil, sorry about this, in a moment. But now signal ground carries down, because I'm just trying to think of this in practical purposes and for many other reasons. And so now I have a signal ground. You might even see I've actually got that written there. I even used solder. I've never written with solder before. That was fun. Signal ground. The coax, I've just done an extension. This is kind of negligible. It wouldn't matter if the coax came straight down, but I've wound it a little bit just to add inductance before the choke to make this the priority, slightly less inductance to signal ground. So this would go to a ground stake or the metal surface you've got it mounted on or whatever. Up here though would be where the radials, the tuned radials, like this one is 3.6 meters long, but it's ideal for 40 meters because it's going 1, 2, 3 of the 3.6 meters. 7.2 would be ideal for 80, but I'm yet to find out if adding a decent signal ground will make it okay enough. I mean, it'll probably be okay enough, better than some wanky designs out there anyway, but I'm a little bit anal in some ways. Anally retentive. AR, amateur radio. Alright, so that goes off to the choke, and that's a 36 turns of coax on a type 43 material. So the shielding of the coax is extremely heavily choked to below 1 megahertz. Now back to the actual coil design. Okay, it's a trifilar coil. Because I was running out of cabling, I didn't have anything that was, 3 parallel wires of a narrow gauge. I literally, you can see there's the red there too, red, green, black, mains cabling, nice stiff copper wire. So that's what I had. So it's like, oh, that's what I use. So I have essentially a pancake coil, but conical, because if you are, because you can imagine whether it's a figure 8 or a triple like this, we've got bulge, 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 and for this to sit on top of the next one, it's going to want to be slightly across to sit in those gaps. So it's much more snug this way. And of course it gives a slight distortion to the fields, but that's not the purpose in this particular installation. It's just a pancake coil, but it's 3 conductors. Okay, so we start at the middle, we spiral all the way out, and we get to the end. Now I'm going to try to explain this. Okay. Now here is the active input from the signal source. So way back down there we have the choke, and we have coax coming all the way up. The coax comes up to this point here, and the shield of the coax is soldered on, as you can see, as messy as it is, onto this copper band. So we're carrying the dynamic reference up to this point, but we're taking the inner conductor and we're carrying it out and around. So what I'll point out now, I'm going to try and get this to sit right. It doesn't want to. Just one sec. Okay, alright. Because I've got a radial on that's wrapping around the bottom and trying to untwist it. So the ground here, this band that's connected to the shield of the coax, from here on connects to nothing except it connects to a copper strip that curves a little bit around either side, but doesn't continue over, because up here I have, under this tape, a copper strip that is the connection that feeds this element. Okay, but I have this ground reference strip here, not too close to this, just to make sure that the electric field lines coming from here go, hang on, we do have a difference with this. So they'll be more inclined to couple in this direction, and bearing in mind that this is at the inverse sign. So also the end of a copper rail, it comes in and under, so to this point. So there is a common ground rail running along in between, but not getting too close, because I don't want too much seepage straight across capacitive or shunt capacitance straight back to ground, because I want to allow these to get excited and to project E field potential outwards. Now this is not about sending a signal, this is storage, and not sending a TEM wave signal anyway. It could be useful for LMD wave, longitudinal, but this is ham radio, so this is a temporary storage. There's so much to this, it's mind-blowing, but I don't share even 0.1% of what I think. So yes, so these are differential. So back to the coil. The center conductor of the coax is what comes into this black wire. Now, this black wire, as you can see, it connects to a green wire this way and this way. Sorry, not this way, sorry. That one's terminated. I got that mixed up. The other end of the green wire is terminated, floating. My bad. This is a lot to keep in your head, okay? So, the active comes in, and we're connecting to one end of the green spiral, but we're connecting to a black that's going to the outer and a red that's going to the inner. So let's go back now. We have three conductors. We have red, green, black. They start at the middle and they spiral all the way outwards to here. So we've got here, it's going around and under 15 times until it gets here. Okay? But what's going on is the changing potential. Remember, we're having to use an ATU, which means that we've got a bad SWR. So we've got reflected power. We tune to that. We add. We pick up the voltage. That's why when there's a high impedance, we need a higher voltage. So we add to that, and if we get it really perfectly right, we're adding to the superposition, to the standing wave ratio, in other words, adding to the voltage. So this increased voltage, when tuned, just a sample of it goes here. But this is a 15 turn big trifilar pancake coil, but that signal presents at the outer of the beginning on the green, but it also presents on the inner on the red, but it also presents on the outer on the black. Okay, so I'm going to freeze us here while I now look at this coil from another perspective. Okay, now if you're familiar with the Tesla bifilar pancake coil, imagine we have one end of the coil here and one end of the coil here, and the idea is we come in and we spiral, let's say outwards however many turns, and then we come back to the middle on the second one and spiral outwards again the same amount of turns, and then we're out. Okay, so that's a typical Tesla bifilar pancake coil. Coming in, spiral outwards or inwards, whichever way, X amount of turns, jump to the next parallel conductor and do the same outwards or inwards, depending, whatever it's mutual, right? And then out. So this is a trifilar coil, but remember we had a red, green and black, whichever way, I don't know which way around, but it doesn't matter, red, green and black. So let's say this is the red, and it spirals all the way outward and then connects to the black on the inside that spirals all the way outwards and then goes to this one. When such a coil is in series resonance, which is a system thing, coil can have its own resonance, but it has its own resonance based on the fact that it doesn't have a system. So it will have its own new system when it's tuned by a tuner into series resonance, or whatever. I can't even say series or parallel or any combination, because this is just very complex. So we've got the spiral out, jump in, spiral out across between here and here on the left and right side of this coil. But the very middle, which, and by the way, if you're familiar with Tesla bifilar pancake coils, if this was a bifilar coil, if it was in resonance, there's always a good voltage between one side and the other, so it acts like a capacitor. So in this case, inside the capacitor is a green wire. It's in the dielectric medium, and only one side of the green wire is connected to the changing signal source. The other end of the green wire is terminated. So essentially I'm throwing in a changing scenario into the middle between these two capacitive plates. Now I've tried many experiments, and some of them actually had this operating very well, except this and this were operating at the exact same electric field potential. So this and this acted like one big torus with reference to everything else. So I wanted to make sure I brought it back to this having a difference with this, but still in the high tension realm. And then as all of this collapses, we go into the low tension realm of rapid current discharge. So so how I solved the problem of them both firing together in the same sign in a simple way. Like, I'd done it much better with this, but this would be too complicated to explain, at least for starters, with a dielectric inductor. But I found a very simple way, and I suppose it's compromised, but I think it's a good start point. So the active signal comes in to the middle point of that red and black, and one end of the green. Now let me explain the middle point of the red and black. Let's go back again. We've got, if it was a bifilar pancake coil, we've got this one coming in, spiraling, let's say, all the way out, and then connecting to the middle of the next one and spiraling all the way out. Well, where the outer of the first run connects to the inner of the next one is the middle. So the signal source comes into the middle. It can either go from the outer and spiral all the way in on one conductor, or it can go to the inner and spiral all the way out on the other conductor. If it was to do both at the same time, it would have two moving charges moving in the opposite directions, which is an interesting thing, because at the point where those two impulses pass each other in the opposite directions but of the same electric charge, they don't store magnetically, but they do store in the dielectric field. But the problem is I have them both firing in the same E field sign. So by having the active coming in, connecting to the middle where it can go either way, but with a bias and going into the dielectric, which is the point between the two on the green wire, that then terminates and has to come back. In a way, the green wire is like a primary. I tune into that and resonate this green wire that's coming all the way through and back. And because of that, that green wire has made a determination on the other wires due to the rotating magnetic fields, which I would rather call radial electric fields that are turning. It's 90 degrees, it makes the same math. So it creates a bias. So when there's a lack of determination, it happens. And of course, when there's an avalanche, then it happens the other way. So there it is. It is working great. I won't bore you with a load of shit on it. Still figuring this out. 7-3, and thanks for watching.